Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bible reading plan. We're in the second chapter of 1 Timothy today, and I love that Paul starts off by talking about general prayer meetings, talking about meeting together and praying for specific things. And he says, first of all, I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. And he said that's good for the gospel, for us to live in a peaceful life so he can promote this gospel of peace. But he says, it is important. There's power to prayer. There's a reason for it. And I think that oftentimes we get together and we don't find much use in prayer. But Paul is saying it's powerful. Prayer works. Prayer moves things. And I think it's very important for churches to have prayer meetings, to get together and pray corporately together as the body of Christ. But then he says something in verse 8. He calls out something between for men and women, which might be a temptation for the church in Ephesus, and I think it could be a temptation for us today for sure. He says, I desire then that in every place the men should pray, lifting holy hands without anger or quarreling. I think that's a temptation for us as men, or for we as men to not want to lift our hands or not want to show outward demonstration of worship, right? I hear the signs of a healthy church are singing men and crying babies, because the thing is, men often don't want to sing aloud in church. Men often don't want to lift their hands in church. Men don't want to pray aloud in church. They don't want to show outward signs. They don't want to lead others by their actions. It's the sin of Adam, was in the garden was passivity. He was standing right beside Eve, but he did not stop her. He did not pull her back from that. He was passive, and I think that's the sin of every single man, that we struggle with passivity. And Paul's warning against that, and he warns against women. Likewise, he says also that women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel, with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire. So those things were cultural context. Those were the things that some women could afford that others couldn't, and they were going in, and their heart was to make others feel bad about themselves, to see them and say, oh, they're so good, I could never be them, I wish I could be them, to make other people sin because of what they are wearing. And this is a temptation for all people, I'd say especially women in general, to wear something to want to make someone sin. But this is next is what Paul says is under a lot of controversy in the church, or a lot of disagreement. And I think Peter writes in one of his things that Paul's writings are just sometimes hard to understand. And we see that here. He says in verse 11, let a woman learn quietly with all submissiveness. I do not permit a woman to teach, to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. For Adam was formed first, then Eve, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and became a transgressor. Yet she will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control. So here's the kicker. This is the one that Christians have been at odds about, for thousands of years, because most of the commands in the Bible, most of the teachings in the Bible are gender neutral, which means they're for men and women. And the Bible teaches equality for men and women, but a qualitative value is different than a quantitative value. So what I mean by that is saying a man and a woman are certainly equal, but they do have different roles, and that's what the Bible teaches. And Paul, there's a cultural aspect to this as well, but Paul foremost is saying men are head of the church. God made man first, and then he made Adam, then he made Eve, and Adam is the head of Eve, and God is the head of Adam, so men should be in authority in a church. He says that outright. But there's also a cultural context to this. Women in Ephesus were not educated, and a lot of scholars believe that these women were going about and just saying whatever they wanted, uneducated, kind of just whatever, because it was the first time they were really ever given a chance to speak in public, to have the right to say things they wanted to say. And it seems to be that these women were going about saying things that were totally off. They were leading people away. They were maybe standing up during church services and just prophesying things that just were inaccurate, that were untrue. And Paul's saying, okay, you are educated, do not stand up, do not speak in that. So I don't know. Paul could be saying, women aren't supposed to be speaking at all in church, but I don't believe that's true. I think there's cultural to this. I don't think that aligns necessarily with the rest of Paul's teachings. I personally think that Paul's saying men should be in charge, heads of the church, just like they're heads of the family, because the church is in like a model of the family. And so I think they should be head, but I think women can teach. I think women, we see many women in the New Testament that are teachers, that are prophets, they are ministers to the gospel. I don't think we can just half the number of potential ministers of the gospel in half and say women can't do this. But I don't think that women should be in the authority position. I certainly do think they can teach under the headship of a man, for sure. But yeah, you have a whole spectrum of people, of complementarian, of egalitarian. But yeah, that's what I believe. I would be interested in hearing where you fall on that and have more discussion on that. But yeah, thank you for joining me in 1 Timothy chapter 2. I hope to see you tomorrow. Bye.